Welcome into another edition of Rain or Shine. I am meteorologist Jacob Lanier here, and to kick us off this week, I'm really excited to bring in one of my good friends in the meteorology world, and also my former roommate and best friend down at Mississippi State University, where we both went to college, Chief Meteorologist Jacob Riley from our sister station, KLBK in Lubbock. Hey, Jacob.
Yeah, hey Jacob, getting the band back together, right?
I know. We always talked about one day we would do kind of this mashup, and here we are.
Yeah, we finally made it.
I know, yeah.
Man. But yeah, excited to be with you today.
Yeah, so this week we're kind of talking about we're in the middle of summer, and so my mind went straight to you because you are in the Panhandle of Texas. You deal with some of the most wild, I would say, desert weather, right? And it's stuff that we don't get here around Kansas City. In Kansas and Missouri, kind of in the Central Plains, because would you consider you guys the Southern Plains, or what's kind of the region that you consider your area?
Yeah, so the area that we're in specifically, we refer to it as the South Plains, but it's the Llano Estacado region of kind of Western Texas and into Eastern New Mexico. So basically the Texas Panhandle all the way down into kind of deep West Texas, what we call the Permian Basin region. But yeah, we are kind of in the tail end of the Southern Plains, I'd say.
And you cover parts of New Mexico too, right?
Yes, so we actually have a couple of different counties in eastern New Mexico that we covered, and that can be a little tricky sometimes because they're in a different time zone as well.
Right.
So whenever we do have like weather alerts, or especially with severe weather coverage, those come out. We have to specify whether it's mountain versus central time that we're talking in those warnings, the expiration times and things like that.
Oh yeah, so because we deal here obviously with two states, and you deal with two states, but you get the extra time zone thrown in, which is a whole other deal.
Make it as easy as possible.
Right. And so one of I think the most fascinating types of weather to me that I've never seen before, and I'm going to pull up a picture of it here, is these dust storms that you guys get, or the haboobs that come. Do these come out of New Mexico, or can they originate in West Texas too, or the Panhandle?
So we see kind of two different dust events, I like to say.
Okay.
We'll have haboobs, but then we also have just our regular dust storms.
Okay.
So a lot of times our dust storms are going to originate more so out of New Mexico. And those happen whenever we get those low pressure systems, those strong gradients with pressure across our region. And that picks up a lot of the drier region, the dust throughout New Mexico, and brings that in as that cold front or that low pressure system tracks through our region. So those give us kind of those generalized just dust storms. And those are really common for us from January through March any given year. But when we get the haboobs, we can see those any time of year. And those are going to form more along with those thunderstorms. We see them a lot in the summer sometimes. I jokingly said my very first day that I started working on TV in Lubbock, I want to see a tornado and a haboob while I'm here. My very first day we had a haboob. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to hold off on the tornado just a little bit.
Right.
But those haboobs typically form, at least with my experience with them here in Western Texas, we've seen them most commonly with these kind of just pop-up storms, these individualized storms, because as that rain falls, it cools the air and causes that air to kind of begin to push out. And as it does, it kicks up a lot of that dust out ahead of it with those outflow boundaries from storms that pop up. That's whenever we can see more of those haboobs kind of more frequently in contrast to those dust storms when we have those big time storm systems roll through.
And that's interesting because I didn't realize that there was kind of a season, I guess, for those true dust storms. Is one worse, like in visibility or wind terms? Like, does the haboob maybe have stronger winds and the dust storm has lower visibility, or does it really just kind of vary?
They're both horrible, I'll just say that.
Okay.
But typically with those widespread dust storms, typically we have those gradient winds last a lot longer. So I would say they're probably worse. Even back earlier this year in March, we had a day with a strong low pressure system moving through. We had wind gusts anywhere from 65 to 80 miles per hour.
Wow.
Just blowing around, no storms or anything like that in our area, just how strong of a storm system that was. Because in the wintertime, they're more common. We see that those, the troughs, the low pressure systems that kind of ride those troughs are able to go a lot further south. So that's why they're more common then. That's why they have more of a frequency with the season of those dust storms then. But haboobs, they can last a couple of hours, usually 1 to 2 hours at most. Most of the time out here when we get them, it's 15 to 45 minutes. So I would pick a haboob any day over just a good old-fashioned dust storm.
Interesting.
Because, of course, back in the 1930s, about 90 years ago, with the Dust Bowl and everything, Lubbock was kind of like ground zero for a lot of that activity. So that's why people out here who have been here a while are used to them. But native East Texan here with the humidity and the pine trees, my first one, I was like, what did I sign up for?
Yeah, you're from Texarkana originally, right? Or that area. Yeah. And so you went to the other side of Texas. And it's interesting actually too, because later in our show today, this week, Michelle Bogowith, one of our meteorologists, she's going to talk to the Missouri State climatologist about that Dust Bowl era and how it kind of creeped up here into the Kansas City area. So one more question here about these dust storms then, because these high winds obviously can cause damage. So does your local National Weather Service office, do they issue severe thunderstorm warnings, high wind warnings, or is it, I guess, a dust storm warning too?
Yeah, great question. So a lot of times what we will see is unless there's an actual thunderstorm ongoing, we will not see severe thunderstorm warnings. Instead, what we'll do is we'll have high wind watches, high wind warnings, or even in very rare cases, extreme wind warnings.
Okay.
I believe the criteria for those extreme wind warnings are going to be 70 plus mile per hour gust, or maybe 80 mile per hour plus gust, and sustained winds over 60. But with our high wind warnings, that's whenever our wind gusts are upwards of that 70, 75 range, and sustained speeds of 50 to 60. But yeah, we see quite a few of those issued. I would say not too uncommon, during the early winter or late winter, early spring season. And then whenever we have that dust, the visibility starts to get reduced. Most of the times, especially for our offices based out of Lubbock, which covers the majority of our viewing area on TV, they'll just issue blowing dust advisories. Now, if it's a very significant case to where visibility is extremely reduced, they will do those dust storm warnings. But I say we see that blowing dust advisory a little bit more frequently than we do, say, dust storm warnings.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I didn't even realize that there's such thing as a blowing dust advisory. We've never seen that around.
We have them in West Texas, yeah.
Because sometimes here in Kansas City, we will get like severe thunderstorm warnings, even from like wake lows, or kind of like these waves of strong winds that maybe aren't associated with a true thunderstorm or something. So it's interesting how out there a lot of the times, obviously, you're more desert and the dust kicks up. So, I mean, does your rainfall play into these dust storms, Haboob, threats? Like when you have a wet year or a wet winter, does that kind of lower the threat, or does it always kind of dry out in time for that season?
So where we're at in relation to New Mexico, we're only about an hour drive in Lubbock from the New Mexico state line.
Okay.
So most of our dust actually does originate from New Mexico.
Okay.
But you ask a very good question when it comes to precipitation. We only average about 18 inches a year out here.
Oh, wow.
So pretty dry. So only, I think our wettest month is it's May through early July. Our wettest season, and then winter is our driest month, which makes sense as to why that's what we typically see a lot of that dust, say January through March, right? Yeah. But when we do have wetter years, we even can still see that dust come in, because again, most of that does originate from New Mexico, which is a lot more mountainous than our area.
Yeah.
So we can see that still blow in from the west too. But it's not as frequently bad whenever we do have more rainfall. Like this year has been a very wet year from April through now for us, thankfully. So great for farmers, great for those who don't like the dust, myself included. So.
And we just had a big flash flood event here around the Kansas City metro with several inches of rainfall. We got 10 inches of rainfall in parts of our metro. So because we were flirting with a drought here for the summer, and now all those concerns are gone. And so the terrain is another interesting thing that I'm curious about down your way, because you got the mountains and, we deal with dry lines. People in Kansas City know what a dry line is, because we get that sometimes in the spring, in severe weather season, the big dew point crash that can trigger severe thunderstorms. You've kind of got it on a whole nother level, I think. Probably just your geography, right? Because you're closer to the Gulf of Mexico and you're way closer to the mountain ranges.
Right. Yeah. So we do have the tail end of the Rocky Mountains just to our west throughout New Mexico. Down in southwestern Texas, we've got Big Bend National Park, things like that. So Lubbock is very flat. We're on a plateau though. So we are about 3,000 to 5,000 feet above sea level. Our market area is so pretty high above sea level. but we're very flat, but it's more like this. It's at an incline, increasing the further west that you go. So because we're kind of up on a plateau, we do see a limited amount of moisture for the most part for areas that are on top of the cap rock. That's what we call it out here. Okay. Areas to the east of the cap rock, we call the rolling plains. The second largest canyon system in the United States is actually on the northern tier of our forecast area that we have, and it's Polodoro Canyon. Oh, no way. And a lot of times what we'll see is that moisture builds in from the Gulf, and we can see how that terrain really plays into effect, because like you were saying with dryline, is our dryline during the spring kind of meanders back and forth from east to west around the region. Mm-hmm. As soon as it starts to hit that dry line where we have that more abundance of moisture, we know when it does that those storms just really start to blossom. But a lot of times what happens for us too, especially more recent years, we've had more kind of a late night into nocturnal threats, which aren't always most common in West Texas, but here the past couple of years, we've kind of noticed that climatological shift to see that a little bit more with more warming during the overnight lows and stuff. We don't get as cold as we used to here in West Texas. So especially during the summer months. So that allows for kind of that dry line tip back to the west after sunset, and then we can get multiple waves of storms around the region as to that factor. So it's interesting to see how that has kind of played and changed things over the past couple of years and decades too.
Yeah. And I mean, with the dry line, like down your way, it's almost like you don't even need a big mesoscale or a synoptic scale low pressure system, right? Or a big storm or a, trough in the jet stream. Yeah. It just happens like almost, I mean, because
it does.
There was a time, was it earlier this year? Was it last year when you had like a week straight of like a daily tornado threat or coverage?
Yes. That was this year, and typically every year, honestly, from and a lot of it has to do with the monsoon flow, right? The seasonal reversal of winds in the mid-levels of the atmosphere, and we see that Pacific monsoon really increase. And it can vary anywhere from like southern Arizona, southern Nevada, all the way into western Texas. And this year has been a pretty active monsoon season for us throughout New Mexico and in western Texas too. But yeah, the dry line is kind of the driving force of that, but it makes it extra difficult, and you'll get this too, Jacob, because there's not a lot of upper level forcing and steering when it comes to this. So we'll get these big tornadoes. Thankfully, we are a more rural area, so they're not always impacting populated locations. But we'll get these big tornadoes moving at 5 to 10 miles per hour, and then we're doing severe weather coverage, and they're like, well, we got time to watch it because it's only chugging east, and then this year at like 5 miles an hour. And then this year we had a really interesting scenario set up. So similar setup with the dry line. One storm popped up near a city called Littlefield, Texas. It's very small in Lamb County. And then that storm gradually just kept going southeast at about 5 miles per hour. And it ran into a residual outflow boundary from the day prior storms that was just to the west of Lubbock. And I'm not joking when I tell you this, Jacob. That tornado warned storm, that supercell, hit that outflow boundary and stopped. It set over the same place for 3 hours, and they got about 15 inches of rainfall with that tornado just cycling, thankfully, over an open field. Wow. But we had, we had a hail drift of about 12 inches in this area because it just kept dropping over the same spot. So we really would like to get more upper level forcing during severe weather season to kind of, get it out of the way. But that's why flooding potential can also be a big concern for us. And like you just said, with the drought situation, unfortunately for us in West Texas, a lot of time these droughts end in flood because of different setups and scenarios like that.
It's kind of like feast or famine. So I pulled up one of the videos you had from Roosevelt County, New Mexico from earlier this year. And, when it's this dry line situation, it's almost, I mean, like when you say going 5 miles per hour and parking, in my mind, that's ringing like perfect chase tornado.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, very photogenic. And it's fortunately most of the time when that happens, it's over mainly open or rural areas. Now, unfortunately for farmers, if it sets up in their cotton crop, that's not a good thing, right? But we would rather it's set up in an open field than rather in a neighborhood. Yeah. So in West Texas, things are very rural. Like I said, I know you guys are a larger market size up there in TV. We base the market size based on population, right? So y'all are much larger than we are. But Lubbock's a big city. A lot of people kind of write that off sometimes. We have over 250,000 people in the city of Lubbock. So bigger than Amarillo, but more people are familiar with Amarillo. But yeah, so whenever those kind of chase opportunities pop up in these rural areas, it's cool to see from afar. And we have a lot of different cameras across our region too, where we can just sit and watch these things, and it provides a good view and also a level of kind of urgency for viewers at home where these are popping up, because we can see them, but also because it's so flat, we don't have any trees, we're able to give them ample amount of head time and lead time to kind of keep them safe as these storms do start to move too.
Yeah, if you're a weather weenie kind of watching this show and you want to watch tornado coverage, Jacob Riley has some really good stuff on his YouTube page, even from the last couple of years of tornado coverage, just because the tornadoes don't move and they're so photogenic. And you guys have a really good chaser and camera setup down there. So, I mean, people maybe not think about it. You know, they may think of like Oklahoma City, Kansas, or, you know, Alabama, Mississippi. But you guys in Lubbock have some insane tornado coverage for sure.
Yeah, it gets a little crazy sometimes, and
we're
not too mad about not everybody knowing about it either.
Right, yeah. Well, Jacob, thanks so much for joining me today. Really fascinating to kind of compare desert weather down your way to the plains here. So stay safe and good luck, my friend. Good to chat with you.
Yeah, good catching up, Jacob. Take care.
Yep. Okay.